Amelia decided that she wanted to do something or say something, so I had to cut that for a second. Anyway, I don't want to be boring here. It sounds like I just watched that and it sounded pretty boring. I just was talking to a couple of friends, so I might have talked myself out about it, but the thing is that it was a lot of work to prepare a motion, and believe me, it's nothing like what you see on TV, but it's even more work to prepare an appeal. So, you know, and during this time, I have other things that are being, I mean, all along, things that are being neglected. There's no way to hide that. I think everybody can imagine. But, you know, standing in court or sitting in court, listening to the judge, you know, just trying to argue whether she has jurisdiction over whether to even hear, you know, consider the motion is extremely frustrating, and there's no way that I can accept that. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that a judge that is at the Supreme Court imposes an incredibly tight rein on her own power, and yet is accepting of the fact that the city has overstepped its bounds more than once now and for an incredibly long time, and it's definitely an exceptional situation in the law, and certainly they're choosing to exploit it for this reason, for you know, which is really not a good reason. And then you know, to tell me that this is fine because in, you know, November 30th you're going to have the appeal. Well, actually, you know what? It may not be. And if I want to do a good job with the appeal and really have a shot at succeeding, it can't be just a one-day appeal. And it was set for one day a couple weeks ago because there was no other choice for me at the time but to accept it. It was the earliest date for a full day that was available because, as I said, it's in the criminal schedule, which is extremely packed. And I don't think that they pick and choose dates, but it's just what comes up. This is the luck of the draw. And at the time, I didn't know that I would be able to file a motion for an interim order to foster Brindi at all. It wasn't clear. The scheduling judge addressed that second. The first thing was to set down the appeal date, which I guess makes sense, but it really affected my choices because I had to gamble that you know, a day would be okay, and if I didn't want a day, 2 days would be setting it way into, well, at least in the early part of 2013, frankly. And so, you know, later I thought, well, if they gave me the motion, you know, granted me the right to file this motion before I set the date for November 30th, then I would have said, okay, set the trial date or set the appeal hearing for whenever the first 2 days are available, and that would have been, I think, I can't remember now, but at least February or March. And then, you know, provided that I could go, I could have gone into the motion hearing today and said, look, it's going to be several more months before the appeal is heard, and that would have helped me today to try to get the motion passed, you see, or granted rather. And that's really what's a problem, because I just don't get the options that I need when I need them. I don't have the knowledge that I need when I need it, and I don't even know that, you know, anybody would be in a better situation if they had a legal background. I don't really know. I would hope so. But on the other hand, I know that there's a real dearth of people with experience with any kind of dog cases, and they don't seem to do you know, on the whole, all that much better across the board. I don't really know. But I do know that this is a case that should have never happened, and that this is a case that it was really dictated by just maybe 2 or 3 individuals from the very beginning who made a snap judgment or snap decision, and I don't think that they did it with the best interests of anybody in mind. And I really certainly don't know that it wasn't in the interests of animals, because even though the city trots out this idea that you have a right to walk down the street without your dogs fighting and so on, and you know what, that's not a right. Not a right in the sense that you have a right to due process, and not a right in the sense that you have a right to free speech and so on. You have protections under the law, but you don't have a right to not be attacked, okay? You are your property. You only have redress. You have the civil courts for accidents and for things that are, you know, someone does to you that is not against the law as a criminal act. But if it is against the law as a criminal act, then there's proceedings for that. This is not the case that you can sit there and say, you know, oh, well, I have a right to. Yeah, well, I have a bigger right, and my dog has a bigger right, and I think that the moments that, that happen between dogs, which actually nature designed, not us, and we don't even really know why they happen. Frankly, you can't ever be 100% sure, and dog training is a very inexact science, and every dog trainer will tell you a different version of it. So, let's face it, and these things happen quickly and so on. But this is very different from, arbitrarily saying that now we're going to seize your dog, and then we're just going to hang on to her, and we're going to set a date to kill her in 2 weeks, and then, you can go out, you're free to go out and hire a lawyer. That's what they said to me. That's not due process. So, and there's no way of appealing and so on, but, tough. And I produce 16 letters and 10 of them are from dog groomers and trainers and vets and kennel owners and people with dogs, people with kids. I bring it up to them, I file it to them directly within 10 days. They just ignore that. They ignore my letter. They don't want to meet with me. I hire a lawyer. Well, I had to hire a lawyer immediately, actually, to file something within a week. Otherwise, they would have gone ahead and killed Brindi. Now, at this point, there had been a couple of scraps and so on, but only one of them resulted in an injury. And I keep reading now, going back and looking at wounds, plural. And frankly, I looked at that dog from head to toe, and even provided some first aid for the dog. The dog had a cut, some kind of a puncture in the fleshy part of her chest. And that was it. And I looked at her, and I made sure the owner looked at her, and that's all we saw. Now, I don't know why the vet's writing about wounds, because nothing else was bleeding, and there wasn't even any sign of anything. And the dog was just seeming to be happily sitting. She licked my hand, and that was that. And this is a dog that had been aggressive to Brindi down the street, unprovoked, really lunged and barked at Brindi for about, a stretch of 25 feet across the driveway, and Brindi didn't react. Brindi was obeying my stay command. So, Brindi sees a dog coming past my house in an off moment when she just happens to be transitioning from a car to the backyard to the front yard and going into the house, and recognizes this dog and decides, initially she was obeying my stay command, then she went after it. But it was over in seconds. Now she's been in the pound for 4 years, and the subsequent incident that led to her first seizure was something that I don't understand either, because neither I nor a third-party witness saw any contact between Brindi and this dog that a man was walking, that everyone says, oh, it's a hearing dog or something. He wasn't deaf. It was just his mother's dog. She's had an operation, I think even before that she can hear, and I don't even see what the significance is. There's nothing to distinguish in it. But all I know is that the man that was there changed his story several times, and initially reported no injuries. Later there was injuries. Every statement was slightly different. A year and a half later in court, he's suddenly, talking something else. So, he's not a reliable witness, which is not unusual for dog cases, right? Anyhow, meanwhile, they're holding Brindi through even a case for the Supreme Court to declare the law unconstitutional, to declare that the euthanasia order should be quashed, and yet failed to do the primary thing that we asked, and I asked, which was to give her back, order the city to give her back. Now, why the judge decided not to even address the request, I don't know to this day. It doesn't make sense to me, and I don't know, but I do know that my lawyer at the time failed, and maybe it wasn't an accident, I don't know, that he didn't go immediately back to the judge and say, your lordship, this is our request. We made 3 requests, and you didn't, you neither granted or turned down this request, which is the primary reason for this case to be going forward, which is to return the dog to the owner. The justice of the Supreme Court, for some reason, just omitted it. I mean, that's something that just, I don't know how you're supposed to deal with that. But I did learn within a month or two that, yes, you deal with it. You go back and you say it. There's provisions for this in the rules that say, this was not addressed, and it's fair to sit down and request this order to be issued on the basis of the other things passing and so on. There was every reason legally for her to be returned under an order. The city had the option, and the city just decided, no, we're not going to do it. And then they turned around immediately and laid charges against me. The first time they ever laid charges on me, even though there had been incidents. They apparently were so minor that they didn't see that it was necessary to lay charges. But when, a different animal control officer is sent, in fact, there was a switch being made from headquarters and so on, and he decides arbitrarily to issue a muzzle, then informs me and everybody that the muzzle means that if your dog is seen in public, he even said this, seen in public without the muzzle on, doesn't matter for how long or why, we have to take your dog and kill it. Well, you know what? He hands me a copy of the law, and I think that anybody with like a third-grade education could have read that and said, it doesn't say that in this law. And in fact, it doesn't, and it doesn't say it anywhere. Later in the trial, he couldn't even say that it had been written in any way in a departmental policy. But this man's word has now been used going forward in the future, giving third-hand accounts of incidents that go back 4 and 5 years, and those are being used against me today, trying to get Brindi fostered. This man's word is not credible anyhow, and he's been fired since then, and he has a background that's subjected to a lot of questioning, and even was declared as somebody who's a habitual liar by a military investigation. So there's really a problem here now, because there's a compounding of inequities and injustices that's been going on year after year, at the cost of not just Brindi, but especially Brindi and me, and also a number of people around me, or at least people that have been trying to help us, who are very much suffering with this as well. So there's this incredible concocting of laws and non-laws. There's powers that are declared under the law. There's powers that are just somehow coming out of the ether that have allowed or not stopped anyway the city from just going on with continuing to hold Brindi. Now, all the time in the first year, I can't say that it took me many months, after that first 6-month decision, then to go further and really conclude that at no time did they really have the power or authority under the law to continue to hold a dog, my dog, for any length of time, because there simply isn't anything saying this. They only say in the statutes that they get to seize a dog that they suspect is dangerous and so on. Now, I argued you made her dangerous with the muzzle order, because under the law, a muzzle on a dog, ordered on a dog, automatically renders it dangerous. We have a very circular system in this A300 law, and then at the same time, they said they didn't think she was dangerous, and then they haven't ever registered her as dangerous in the municipal registry, which is one of the 3 things that they can do. They can muzzle it, they can microchip it, and they can register it that way. The 4th option that they originally had was to put her down without having to even notify the owner, and no appeal and so on. That's what got quashed. But actually, I had asked my lawyer to quash two or 3 other things in the law, including the muzzle order, because they're allowed to just simply issue a muzzle order without any criteria having been met. They don't have to answer to anybody about it. It's completely at their discretion, and that's way beyond, and there is no appeal process for a muzzle order either. So if you wanted to do this, something about it, and you felt that it was wrong, you'd have to actually start a court case yourself at the expense, of hiring a lawyer and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I know that at odd times it's been done, but it's very difficult to do that while you're trying to do other things with your dog, and especially if you're trying to renovate a house or whatever, live your life. So it's completely wrong. And I mean, there's nothing to guard against arbitrary and, unfair decisions being made and burdening somebody for the rest of their life, whether it's a dog or a person. And this is extremely wrong. There's no way that this can compare to a 20 seconds, 10 seconds of a dog scuffle. And a dog scuffle, which, I must say, I am shocked to find that people are so disingenuous that they want to say that it just stopped. Oh, they just stopped fighting. We kicked the dog for a while, but they just stopped fighting, and then they seem to edit me out, because frankly, this 2010 incident, I went between the dogs. I was taught to go between dogs and how to separate, just to stop the fight from even happening, frankly, I was taught. And I just also knew, and that if I go and I grab my dog by the collar off of that dog, or apart, let's say, she's not on it, but off of it, that she's going to not attack me. She's going to come with me, and I'm going to discipline her. There was nothing else that would have stopped it in one case, at least. And I think they don't, a dog that's trying to subdue another dog, and that's really what it was about. It was a communication of dominance, or whatever you'd like to call it, not an effort to maim or kill or anything of the kind. So, people are shocked by it because they're not animals and they don't communicate that way with their mouths and their bodies. But dogs do, and because they do, it means that they don't feel the impact that we would think. People are projecting and thinking, oh, my dog was so traumatized and it took her months to recover. Well, I'm sorry, but that's really probably not true. And this is another exaggeration that's been handed down from proceeding. But first of all, it really galls me. I go in and separate dogs, and I timed it, on 2 occasions, and then somehow it's sort of vaguely glossed over in the account by the other dog owner. And that's that. And the other dog owner in the case with the one flesh wound, not only did she not bother to discipline her dog when her dog was actually lunging and growling, barking at Brindi, and there's a person watching, she also really didn't seem to have any control over her dog when I went to give her a check, which I volunteered to do, to pay for her vet costs, which ended up getting inflated a bit. She waited a day to go to the vet the next day, and it was a new vet, and they just charged her a lot for an exam, and they did the first aid and so on, and they gave antibiotics to the dog. And these are things that, in nature, antibiotics are not always a good idea, but that's another topic. Anyhow, the thing is that I didn't know she was going to report it, and then they came and said, you're going to be fined $220. Boom. So that was bad. No, that was the announcement I heard. But then something went on, because I think it was a couple weeks later, the man came back and said, we're going to issue a muzzle. And I said, what do you mean? I said, there's no need for that, and why don't you just let me put up a fence, and as well, I'll do this, and and I'll pay the fine or whatever. And that was that. But I didn't know this, and so what had happened was, because I said to the woman, look, I didn't think you were going to report it, and I didn't think this was going to be fined, and it seems like a pretty steep fine, and it seems also that it's not the usual thing. She went behind my back, really, and asked the man via email to not fine me, and that ended up getting a response from him to say, would you like us to muzzle the dog, and that way, if there's anything else that happens, we'll just take the dog and kill it. And she just simply said, yes, please. Now, this is a woman her dog was not trained. It was a smaller dog than Brindi, but they could still do harm, and it had really been aggressive to Brindi. When I went to pay the check to her, eventually, she didn't have any way to control it from coming to the door or barking, and she was yelling to her husband to go and grab the dog. And I'm sorry, but Brindi doesn't do that, or didn't do that, and she was always, when someone came to the door, she never barked, and she never rushed the door, but I also taught her to go and stay in her bed while people were coming to the door, so she didn't run up to them. So, I spent a lot of time and focus on her, and people assume that I adopted her knowing that there was a problem with her. Well, why would I do that? I'm a single person. I'm trying to renovate a house with a new foundation. That's a big challenge as it is, and there's much more than the foundation to do. Why would I do that? The judge today says to me, and I don't get a chance to correct her, that, oh yes, well, you have a big heart, it was so good you adopted a dog that had a problem. No, ma'am, that's not the case. In fact, it wasn't until after 8 weeks of obedience class, which she passed, and beautifully, exceeding expectations, that she suddenly, decided that she was going to be territorial when a dog was being walked by. That was really not characteristic of her at all. Not at all. And I don't see that anybody can explain it. I've gone through several trainers' opinions and review and so on. But that's what it is, okay? So she has a streak of something that seems uncharacteristic. The rest of the time, she was a model dog. She was really fantastic and didn't jump on children, never thought about jumping on anybody, actually. I just simply said to her twice, down, or no, actually not down. I said no. But 6 months in the pound, I get to finally visit her, and she practically knocked me down because I realized, as I witnessed on that time as well, that they were feeding her treats to come and jump on their chests and do this. Are you crazy? So, I mean, she's not a huge dog, but you don't do that with any dog. I'm sorry. You're just inviting a problem. And I had taken pains to be consistently, reinforcing her training and so on in the right way that I could. But anyway, that I had to untrain her from that, which happened actually pretty quickly. Even though I only saw her for half an hour a week, within 2 or 3 weeks, she stopped. Of course, now and then she would do it to the SPCA volunteers because they didn't really know how to handle that. So what can I say? It sounds like I'm blaming everybody, but you know what? I think that really in the big picture here, and it's a big picture, my sins are sins of accidents and, really happenstance, and I took great pains to correct the situation immediately and, put a stop to things and apologize and rectify it. I can't say that that was done by all the other parties, and I certainly think that the city has not once apologized for making up a law and telling the public about it. They haven't, oh my God, apologized. They've done many other things like evict me and try to tear down my heritage house as well. And in fact, I fear every time I do something for Brindi to try to continue to keep her alive and to hopefully get her out of there, I fear direct retaliation because they've set up a situation where they could actually auction, seize my house and auction it off as a tax sale. Anyway, this shouldn't be happening, period. And today was extremely disappointing, not only because it was turned down, but the way it was turned down. And I think that there was a double standard going on between, what the judge was saying about jurisdictional questions and then using the affidavits submitted to her by HRM that had to do with actually the argument about the motion, like why she shouldn't be fostered and so on, using those as an argument about why she didn't have jurisdiction. And in a way, that's really what she was doing. And when I would take issue with their affidavits or their claims, she would then tell me, that'll be brought up in the appeal. Well, actually, no. It's not all applicable to the appeal, but it doesn't matter. The point is, if I don't get a chance to refute the affidavits in the court, that's not right. So she's not permitted to just simply apply them as she sees fit without hearing the other side of it. So, certainly I've been on the other end of that as well. And I tried to get an affidavit accepted from a vet during the trial, and it was just completely booted out. And I didn't want to subpoena the vet because she would have to abandon her clients for a day, and I can't reimburse her for her time as well. And so I tried to arrange for the city to be able to cross-examine her somewhere else or some other way, and they just didn't. So there was no way for that to be heard. The judge just literally just booted it out. And today, 2 affidavits were accepted without these people taking the stand. Okay, so that's the problem. But otherwise, I think there's a big discrepancy going on because, I'm hearing this would be a precedent. I don't know if I can interfere. This is a Supreme Court judge. And the Judicature Act law that gives them their power is very broad. I mean, it really just, paints a picture where a justice of the Supreme Court has the power to, if they think it's important to do it for some reason, to be just, to act or order something to not be done, they have complete license